Right now, there are more than 1 billion cows alive on this planet, and almost every single one exists for just one reason. In the United States alone, 9 billion chickens get slaughtered every year. Sheep, pigs, goats, rabbits, and deer are all part of massive worldwide industries to animals that spend their entire lives quietly eating nothing but grass, grain, and leaves, day after day. Now think back. When was the last time you saw a lion steak sitting on a restaurant menu? Or wolf? Or eagle? Or shark outside of a bowl of fin soup you probably shouldn't be eating anyway? Humans have hunted, farmed, and eaten nearly every plant-eating animal on Earth at some point in history. Predators, though we've almost never touched them. Not really. Not at any real scale at all. Not as a regular meal. Not even as a small habit anywhere. Across nearly every culture, on every continent, groups of people with no contact, no shared language, and no shared religion somehow landed on the exact same unspoken rule. Eat the animals that eat plants. Leave the animals that eat meat completely alone no matter who you were, or which corner of the world you happen to call home. If you stop and think about that, it's a little strange. A wolf and a cow are both just meat, in the end. Both are made of muscle, fat, and protein. Both are technically edible. So why does one show up on dinner tables all over the world, while the other almost never does at all? That gap between the two really does deserve a proper explanation. The answer isn't just one simple reason. It's a mix of biology, chemistry, and culture, all stacked on top of each other somehow, all pointing toward the exact same conclusion. Let's start with the math, because honestly, it almost wins this whole argument on its own. Back in 1942, an ecologist named Raymond Lindemann worked out something scientists now call the 10% rule. At every single step up a food chain, roughly 90% of the energy gets lost along the way. Some is burned off as body heat, some is spent moving around all day, some is simply wasted during digestion. Only about 10% of that energy actually survives the climb to the next level, and that tiny number ends up changing everything about what a predator costs. Picture a field of grass holding 100 pounds of stored energy. That grass supports roughly 10 pounds of deer, and those 10 pounds of deer only support about 1 pound of wolf, sitting at the very top of the chain. To raise a single pound of predator meat, you need about 10 pounds of prey underneath it and 100 pounds of plants underneath that. Predators are, by pure design, the single most expensive meat on the entire planet to produce. Farming lions would basically mean raising an animal whose whole diet is other farmed animals. Raising one ordinary cow already eats up years of grain, water, and land most people never think about. A predator would take roughly 10 times that energy no civilization on Earth ever had to spare. But cost isn't even the biggest problem. Something else quietly builds up inside predator meat, and it has nothing to do with money. It's called biomagnification, and it's basically slow poison. Toxins like mercury, lead, and industrial chemicals don't disappear as they move up a food chain. Instead, they concentrate layer after layer, animal after animal, all the way up to the very top. A small fish absorbs a tiny trace of mercury, barely enough to matter on its own. A bigger fish eats hundreds of those small fish and absorbs all that mercury at once. A shark eats hundreds of those bigger fish and absorbs even more than that. This is exactly why doctors today warn pregnant women to stay away from shark, swordfish, and king mackerel completely. It isn't because these fish are naturally unhealthy. It's because they sit at the top of a chain that's been silently soaking up toxins for years, one small meal at a time. This same deadly pattern nearly wiped bald eagles off the map in the 20th century. A pesticide called DDT washed into rivers, got soaked up by algae, and concentrated inside every fish that ate it. Then it concentrated again inside every eagle that ate those fish. By the 1960s, DDT levels were high enough to thin their eggshells, until eggs collapsed under their own mother's weight, and populations across the continental United States dropped to fewer than 1,000 nesting pairs, before DDT was finally banned in 1972, decades after the damage had already spread quietly everywhere. This danger isn't some brand new discovery either. Sled dogs across the Arctic have known for generations, purely by instinct, never to touch polar bear liver at all. Human explorers didn't always get that memo. Members of Douglas Mawson's 1911 Antarctic expedition ate husky liver out of pure desperation and came down with violent headaches, peeling skin, and eventually organ failure nobody could explain yet. Scientists later identified the cause as hypervitaminosis, an extreme and dangerous form of vitamin A poisoning. Polar bear and husky liver store such a high concentration of vitamin A that a single meal can actually kill a person outright. Arctic communities had known to avoid it for centuries, long before science ever caught up with a real name for why it happened at all. Predator meat also behaves differently, long before it ever reaches anybody's plate. Prey animals mostly graze around peacefully all day long. Predators sprint, stalk, and fight hard for every single meal they manage to catch. That constant stress floods their muscles with cortisol and adrenaline, and drains away the glycogen that normally keeps meat tender once an animal is calm at slaughter. The result is meat that's tougher, gamier, and often carries a strong, musky flavor from testosterone-related compounds sitting deep inside the tissue. Hunters who have actually tasted mountain lion or wolf almost always describe it the same way: edible, in a true survival situation, sure but never something you'd willingly choose to eat on a normal day when better food is available. And then there's disease, maybe the ugliest problem on this whole list. Predators eat the sick, the old, and the weakest animals in a population, which means they're also eating whatever parasites those animals happen to be carrying. Trichinosis, a dangerous parasite once common in undercooked bear and wild boar, spreads specifically through predator and scavenger meat, and it really isn't rare at all. History does have a small handful of exceptions, and honestly, they prove the point instead of breaking it. Bear meat has been eaten in parts of Scandinavia, Russia, and North America for centuries, but almost always in small amounts, cooked until essentially sterilized. Lion meat has occasionally shown up in Africa during extreme famine, when starving communities genuinely had no other option left at all. In nearly every documented case, humans only turned to predator meat once every safer. Plant-based alternative had already run out completely. That's the rule confirming itself again, not breaking it. South Africa currently runs a legal lion farming industry, but it exists almost entirely to sell lion bones into traditional medicine markets, not to put lion meat on anyone's actual dinner table anywhere. Human culture eventually caught up with biology too, and made the rule official in writing across several major religions. The dietary laws in Leviticus forbid eating birds of prey and clawed carnivores by name. Islamic dietary law draws that same exact line, prohibiting animals that hunt using fangs or talons, a boundary that shows up across cultures with zero contact with each other. Some anthropologists believe this was never only about safety, either. Predators were also feared, respected, and in many cultures, openly worshipped. You don't eat the animal, you've built a religion around the creature whose skull sits on your chief's headdress. Across dozens of unrelated civilizations, the lion, the eagle, the wolf, and the bear became symbols of power and divinity instead of dinner. So the real answer was never just one single thing. It's biology stacking on chemistry, stacking on culture, all pointing in the exact same direction. Predator meat costs too much energy, carries too much poison, tastes worse, and carries far more disease than animals lower on the chain. Humans spent thousands of years turning apex predators into symbols instead of meals. The wolf was never really on the menu.